Hey everybody, this is Chris Edney with Sigma Squared. Today I'm going to show you how to reconcile PayPal transactions to QuickBooks the right way. Now if you've ever done this in the past, you may have found that this takes hours and hours to do, even a few hundred transactions. It is a tedious task, but there's a simple way to do it with a tool that I created. Now I'm going to show you how to use it. Let's get started. Now, to use this tool, you're going to need three pieces of information. The first thing you're going to need is the PayPal statement. It looks a little something like this. The next thing that you're going to need is the list of transactions from PayPal. This is the detailed transaction, and it probably looks something like this. The last thing you're going to need is data from QuickBooks. I'm going to show you how to get that now. Go into your QuickBooks Reconcile page and make sure that you're on the PayPal account. Here, we're going to start reconciliation just like normal. Looking for my ending balance here, I can get that from here. My ending balance in this case was $22,49.77. We are reconciling February. I'm going to start reconciling. This is where it may go a little different from what you're used to. From here, we're going to do a couple of things. First thing is we're going to change the date of our reconciliation. What we want to do is grab the next workday, or at least the next day that the bank was open. This month ended on the 28th, which is a Tuesday. The next business banking day is the 1st. If the month were to end on a Saturday or Sunday, you would want to grab the Monday following. If that Monday were a holiday, you would want to grab Tuesday. Basically, what you're trying to do is give yourself enough latitude to make sure that you're grabbing enough information from QuickBooks to match all the data that is in the PayPal statement. Here I'm going to apply this. Now this part can get a little tricky. As we scroll down and view these transactions, QuickBooks is loading them. In order to load all of them into memory, we actually need to go through the process of scrolling through each one. If you've done this in the past, you may have found that if you go too fast, all the data is lost and it brings the scroll bar back to the top. So I'm going to go little by little all the way to the bottom. I'm not going to make you sit through this. I'll speed this up. Okay, now I'm at the bottom of the data. I know that going through that can be very tedious, but it's important that we do that because of the next step. If we don't, sometimes data is missing. Here's what we're going to do next. We're going to go over here and click Print. Whenever the print screen comes up, we're going to cancel out. Now that we have the screen, click Cancel. Now I'm going to come here to the top and I'm going to grab all the header data and I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. Now, if you don't grab the header, this isn't going to work. So make sure you start with the header and go all the way to the bottom. The way you get to the bottom is Control-Shift-End. There we go. That selects all the data. I'm going to copy this with Control-C and now I'm going to go into the template and show you how it works. We pull data from QuickBooks and we go to the Drop Export Here tab. I'm right up here at the top and I'm just going to paste this in. Whenever I do that, it drops it into this section here, and now I've got formulas that I'm going to try to use to match this data up to data in the rest of the sheet. Now at this point, there is no data in the rest of the sheet, so it's all going to come back as errors. But that's okay. This is still useful to have, because later, if we're still not able to fully reconcile, we can use this tab to identify any additional variances. We'll deal with that later if we have to. So we're going to copy this, paste it here, and then I'm going to go all the way to the bottom of my data, Control down. Now I'm going to go all the way to the top, Control V to paste. Now we've got this formula for all the data. Unfortunately, there's not a good way to ensure that we've captured all the data from QuickBooks. We've tried, we've done everything in our power right now. Sometimes the data doesn't come through. If it doesn't, I'll show you how to deal with that later. Next, we're going to take this data, so not the formula, but the data that we pulled down. So Control-Shift down takes me to the end, and then I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to put this into the QBO Register tab here. Now I've got a few formulas in this tab as well. Most of the formulas have highlighting on them. So I'm going to grab this. The date goes all the way down to the bottom. So Control down takes me to the bottom, then Control up. Actually, if you hold Control-Shift up, it will select all the rows, and I'm going to paste this in. As we're using this tool and comparing it with PayPal, this is one of the primary columns we're going to use. Here, we can look and see that we have variances. In this case, we have two. The first type is $0 transactions, which are transactions on the QuickBooks side that have either been deleted or voided. The second type of variance is for items that have no match. Right now, they show as no match because we haven't brought in any data from PayPal. We'll come back to that in a moment. The other thing we want to do here is keep all our original reference numbers. We can use Control-Shift-End to select all the data, and if we hold Shift and then use our arrow key, we can actually condense this down to the part we need. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste all my reference numbers here. The reason we do this is because throughout this process, we will change some of the QuickBooks transaction numbers to better match what is on the PayPal side. And it can be useful to know what the original number was, like if there was a payment or a journal entry in this case that would match the PayPal transactions. This gives us the ability to know what we had originally before any of those changes took place. All right, the next thing we're going to do is utilize a couple of custom formulas. The first formula takes data from the memo. I'll show you what it looks like. This formula works with data that has HTTP in the memo. And items that include HTTP, we will find the 17-digit PayPal transaction number at the end of the line. This is what is used to get a one-to-one match from QuickBooks transactions to the PayPal transactions. This month, most of the QuickBooks transactions already have the transaction number in them, so we can leave them alone. But here are a few that don't. Down here, we have some blanks. I'm going to take this formula, copy it, and I'm going to paste it here, 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 and here. What this formula does is pull the right side of the transaction and grab the last 17 digits, which is the reference number for PayPal. The next thing I want to do is clear my filters. And I want to pull back anything that is not a PayPal transaction number. So I've got some journal entry numbers here. And then at the bottom, I've got some transactions that are marked as payments and blank. Here, I'm going to take this next formula. Now, what the next formula does is it looks for unique values in the PayPal data. So think, we have not found the transaction number for these. So now instead, we're going to be looking for a match on the amount. Here's a transaction for $78.27.87. If this transaction only shows up once in the PayPal data, then it will pull back the reference number associated with it. However, if it comes back more than once, or it is both positive and negative, then it will give me an error and say that it needs to be reviewed. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go over to the bottom of my data. I'm going to do Control-G to bring this up, click Special, click Visible Cells Only, and Control-V to paste. Now at this point it says Manual. The reason it says Manual is because it wants me to go and validate these transactions. It says something is wrong with the data. The reason there's something wrong is because we haven't pulled any PayPal data in yet. So let's go ahead and do that now. Here's the tab for the PayPal data. And I'm going to go to the PayPal CSV that we downloaded, and I'm going to copy all this data. I'm going to paste it right here. In the highlighted section, we can find another formula. This one takes the PayPal data and looks back at QuickBooks, whereas the other one was QuickBooks looking at PayPal. We've got the formula here, so I'm going to copy it, go all the way to the bottom of the data, paste that in, and you can see that we've got several matches, meaning that QuickBooks matches PayPal for those transactions. Now that we've added the PayPal data, we can see some of the ones that were manual have been replaced, but we still have some that are manual. The reason these are still manual is because there's no transaction amount. These are a series of journal entries that were voided out and an expense that was voided out. It makes sense that the voided transactions would not be on the PayPal side. That means these are $0 transactions and we can ignore them. Let's look to see what other errors we have. All right, remember before we only had two transaction types, $0 transactions and no match variances? Now we have two new identifiers. One, which is a transaction ID match, which means that the QuickBooks tab looked for that particular PayPal transaction ID on the PayPal side, found a one-to-one match, and brought that back. So those are good to go. We have another one, which is a transaction ID variance. What this says is something's not adding up. The most common cause of this error is the PayPal transaction ID showing up more than once on the PayPal side. Let's go and see if that's the case now. The best way to do this is to copy the amount and come over here and just search for that amount. 9898 showed up twice, and it has the same transaction number. Here's what's happening. In QuickBooks, we download the transactions into the PayPal bank, and it doesn't work the same way that a traditional bank account would download a transaction. If we go to our checking account, it just pulls back the transactions that are associated, and it generally has all the transactions. PayPal, however, does not send all transactions to QuickBooks. PayPal leaves gaps in the data. The number one reason a transaction is missing is because of a refund. Refunds almost never show up on the QuickBooks side. The other major reason for the error is the cancellation of a hold. In this case, the hold is on the QuickBooks side, but the cancellation of the hold is not, so we need to add that. The way we can match that, by the way, is we see that this is a payment, so it's money going out on the PayPal side. Money going out is shown as a negative. This is the one that is the match, and this is the one that is not. I'm going to put duplicate here so that we know what we did. Now, if I come back, it shows that there's now a one-to-one match, and we can move on to the next one. So let's do this again. 161. In this case, we have 3 transactions, but only 2 of them have the same transaction ID. Once again, it's because there's a cancellation of a hold, which is not on the QuickBooks side. And we're just going to come right here and write duplicate. Now, I put duplicate because it helps me to remember. It's really not necessary to put anything. It would work just fine if we deleted it. It's just a reminder from me that I made an edit and why. So now this transaction ID is a match, and we can move on to the next one, 218. All right, so same thing here. 2 of them are the same. One of them is the cancellation of the hold. So I'm going to put duplicate here and back here to check to see if there's any errors. And now we're down to 3 error types. Now we move on to the no match variance. A no match variance says that neither the PayPal ID nor the exact amount can be found in the PayPal data. Let's try to determine why. All right, remember at the beginning, we expanded the dates? We didn't stop it at February 28th. We expanded it to March 1st because we wanted to make sure that we captured all the transactions that may have happened on February 28th in PayPal, but didn't hit QuickBooks until March 1st. By doing that, we knowingly pulled some transactions that took place on March 1st in both systems and wouldn't be a match. In this case, it's saying that these transaction IDs can't be found in PayPal. And the obvious reason is because these transactions took place on March 1st. So I'm going to give myself a little memo here and call these out month transactions. Control G brings this up, special, visible cells only. All right. So now let's look to see if we have any other errors. We do have $0 transactions. We know what those are. We have out month transactions and we know what those are. Everything else is a match. Now let's go look at the PayPal side and see if PayPal says we've captured all the transactions. All right. I'm going to open this up. Now, for the company that I'm supporting here, they conduct business in multiple currencies. And as we're going through this, I really don't care about the other currencies because PayPal automatically converts whatever the other currency is into US dollars. So I'm going to filter now on just US dollars. And now I'm going to look for errors. All right. In this case, I've got 4 different types of errors. One is cancellation of hold, which we've already talked about. Another is chargeback. Now, for some reason, chargebacks just don't come through QuickBooks. Some do, but most don't. I haven't been able to find any real rhyme or reason as to why one would come through, but the other doesn't. But going through this process will at least help us capture the ones that need to be added. So as we're going through this, we have payment refunds, which usually make up the bulk of the missing transaction. Refunds, again, for whatever reason, just don't come through as downloaded transactions. And then we have user-initiated currency conversion. Most of these are sales, refunds, or chargebacks that took place in a foreign currency, in this case meaning a non-US dollar currency, and get converted to US dollars. Historically, I've put these into exchange gain loss, but if your QuickBooks can handle foreign currency transactions, you may want to add each of these individually. Now, let's make sure that all the variances have been explained. One of the easiest ways to see this is to go to the Pivot tab. Now, the Pivot tab is just a summary of what's happening in both sheets. I'm going to come here and I'm going to refresh the data. So go to Data and Refresh All. What this does is it looks at the QuickBooks side and also the PayPal side. Now in this case, I started with a fresh sheet, so no data, which means the currency is switched to blank because there wasn't a currency. I'm going to select US dollars, and that pulls back all transactions that were made in US dollars. I have a section right here in the middle that is a way of trying to reconcile the statement. And ultimately what this does is it tries to confirm that the PayPal statement matches all of the detail in our tool. Let's take a look at that now. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the statement and I see US dollar transactions right here. Let me just pull this to the side real quick. And make this a little larger. There we go. Now, I'm going to enter this data over here to see if we have a match. I'm starting with 13,254.24, then 185, 596.18. Payments, payment sent is a negative amount here, so I'm going to put that as a negative amount on this side. Now, it automatically calculates my ending balance. Based on this sheet, it should be $2249.77, which matches here. It says that the change from $13,254.24 is $11,004.47, which it's finding right here, and says that the statement, the PDF statement, matches the details. Down here, this looks at all the payments that came through and all the deposits from the PayPal perspective. This looks at all the payments and deposits that have been captured on the QuickBooks side. And this is the variance between these two. And you can see, I don't need this anymore, so I'm going to put this back up. The bulk of the variance is right here on refunds. QuickBooks says that there was $27,010.40 in refunds. Now let's see. So 27,405, 27,405.78 is the difference. And that's right here, 27,405.78. And then as far as the deposits, the variance is 31,1387 and 31,1387. So in this, we've been able to capture all of the variances between QuickBooks and PayPal. If there were any unusual things, like the last time I tried to record this video, I was running into some really strange things where there was an entire day from the data that I pulled down from QuickBooks that wasn't coming through. Literally, February 6th was completely missing from the data, even though I pulled the data just like before from January 31st all the way to March 1st. Even though I had that range, February 6th was just missing. So I went in, I specifically downloaded February 6th from the QuickBooks data, dropped that into the tool, refreshed it all, and all the errors cleared. I just want to let you know that sometimes when you're pulling down the data from QuickBooks, some odd things can happen. So in this case, it looks like we captured everything because I'm expecting payment refunds to be missing. I'm expecting currency conversion to be missing because that doesn't hit the downloaded QuickBooks. Chargebacks, some come through and some don't. And cancellation of hold is notorious for not coming through. So with that, I feel confident that we can add in a transaction to QuickBooks that will capture this and will reconcile my account. Now, I'll go into this a little more in a subsequent video, but there is a way to mass upload each individual missing transaction into QuickBooks in a matter of minutes. I'm not going to go into that right now because it deserves its own video, but trust me, it's a great way to do it, so keep your eye on my videos for those. For now, we're going to go ahead and add this the easy way. So here's how we do that. I'm going to close out of this and then duplicate this tab real quick. Now I'm going to create a new expense. I'm going to go to date it for February 28th. The payee is PayPal. Really, the payee is not necessarily PayPal, but I like to have a payee to identify where I made this transaction and why. So this is 2023-02 PayPal Recon. Now here, I'm going to actually enter this expense. But you may ask, why are you entering it as an expense? The main reason is because the bulk of this is an expense. Out of the total, 27,000 or so is an expense. So I can treat these two as a contra expense and QuickBooks will let me book it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do so this is a hold, which is usually a balance sheet transaction, but I treat it as a chargeback. It's not really a chargeback, but rather than putting it as a hold and having a new balance sheet account to reconcile for this one bit, I put it as a chargeback because in the case of this client, most of the time, it will clear by the following month. If you don't like putting it there, then put it where you think is most appropriate. This is just a way of capturing that reconciliation amount. So here we go. Now this is an expense, but in this sheet, it's a positive number. So it is a negative expense or the opposite of an expense. All right, now we've got chargebacks. This one acts as an offset to the first one. It is an actual expense, so we'll put this in as a positive number. The next one, we don't have it as refunds, we have it as returns. So sales, returns, PayPal. That is a refund and is 271040. And then user initiated currency. This one I've been entering as exchange gain loss. That one is a contra expense, so let's put it in as a negative number. All right. So now we have an expense that is entered for $24,294.91 and $24,291.91. So I'm going to save that. All right. Now I'm ready to do the QuickBooks reconciliation. Now it's time to finally do the reconciliation in QuickBooks. We've already captured all transactions. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this so I make sure that we captured that expense that we just entered. We've already captured all transactions from January 31st through March 1st. If I select all of those transactions here, I'm going to be off by a little bit. Usually, what I'm off by is the ones that were excluded that were the out-month transactions. So let's take a look here. This is actually easier if you move it on 2 screens, but for the video, I'm just going to try to do it on 1. So the out-month transactions here. All right, so I'm going to come down to the bottom of my data. Okay, so we've got ones from March 1st. Those are the ones that are the out-month transactions. So I'm going to go through this and you can see that it is in order, but I need to make sure that I'm grabbing the right ones. So especially if there are duplicate amounts. In this case, this one ends in 700R, the one up here, 700R, so I can take that off. The next one is 149.35 here, 107.95, 99.81, 91.79. More than anything, because we exported this in order, it actually shows up in order, which is really useful. If we have multiple transactions that are the same amount, then you actually do have to look at the reference number. But because this is a limited sample set, it's a little easier to go through. 141, 111.30, 92.87, 84.68, 192.48, 72.04, 94.88, 160.30, and 80.70. There we have it. Now, we were able to bring all the transactions from PayPal into QuickBooks. We were able to match them on a one-to-one basis, identify the ones that were not in QuickBooks, and easily bring those in as an expense. Hey, if you liked this video, I'd appreciate it if you gave me a thumbs up and left me a comment. If you'd like a copy of this tool, send me an email at the email address that's in the comments. And if I can help you with anything, feel free to reach out. I'd love to help. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this.